And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Steve Calderon, who writes, Victor Miller, the screenwriter of the original Friday the 13th movie, has won a copyright termination case to reclaim the domestic rights to the horror franchise thanks to help from attorney Mark Toberoff. Now, this is the same attorney who was helping the estates of Stan Lee and Steve Ditko fight Marvel to also reclaim ownership of several characters that include Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and Thor, and Iron Man, by the way. What are your thoughts about this news? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in. All right, guys, listen very carefully. This is a story about Friday the 13th, but it is a story about so much more.
Oh, yeah.
This could be, if the dinosaurs, Rob, had a cable news network, this would be the story they reported early, said, by the way, mysterious light seen in the sky. 3 days later, dinosaurs are wiped out, right? This, I'm not saying that's what this story is, but it could be, and here's why. You guys know that for the last little while, we've been talking about a couple of these, what's called copyright termination cases. It's going on in regards to the original screenwriters of Predator and Disney, because they're trying to get the rights to it back, and as well as the estates of Stan Lee, Ditko, and one or two others that are trying to get the rights back to certain characters that they created, even though the copyright is now owned by Disney. And we've been talking about that for a little while. There's been a similar case going on between the original screenwriter of the first Friday the 13th, and I believe it was Paramount, might be one of the others, but the producers of it as well, claiming that he has a right now to go to them and take back the copyright because a certain amount of time has passed and he should be allowed to take it back. This is the same legal principle that's at play in the whole MCU situation. It's the same principle that's at play. But for the first time, the person trying to get the copyright back has scored a major victory. All right, this comes to us from the folks at the Hollywood Reporter who write this. Victor Miller, represented by Mark Toberoff, once scared moviegoers with Friday the 13th, 4 decades after penning that influential horror flick, which prompted numerous sequels. He has scored an impromptu legal victory that may frighten Hollywood producers. On Thursday, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed a win for him in a copyright termination battle. As a result, he's set to reclaim the domestic rights to the franchise, and there's still reason for settlement given that the producer retains foreign rights as well as intellectual property derived from Friday the 13th sequels, including maybe the monstrous Jason. Because remember, Rob, Jason wasn't the predominant character of the first Friday the 13th movie, contrary to most people's belief.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
Come on
alert.
now.
Character that showed up later in the franchise. All right. This is a little bit complex and a little bit complicated, but the basics of it is this. This guy who wrote the script, who was paid to write the script for that movie, he got paid for his work. He's just won a court case where the court said, yep, you get to have the copyright back, at least in part. It's still very confusing because the producers have international rights to it, but he gets domestic rights to it. So, I mean, there's a lot of confusion here still. But Rob, the key thing here is the important thing, the flash in the sky, is that one of these copyright termination cases just actually won. And now the situation with the Marvel case is a little bit different because I believe the Friday the 13th script was written once this termination of copyright law was created. The Stan Lee and Ditko situation, those works were done before that law existed.
Yeah.
So it does create a little bit of a question mark about how, so just because this guy won, it doesn't automatically mean that the Stan Lee and Ditko estates are going to win either, because there are some differences, but the basic principle is there. The court has sided with the creator that he gets to get his copyright back. Rob, is it exaggeration to say that this could be absolutely cataclysmic for somebody like Marvel, this company that has control over these incredibly iconic characters that makes up their empire. If they were to suddenly lose the rights to those characters, I mean, obviously they'd probably still stand because they'd back up big trucks of money to the estates and have to pay tons and tons and tons and tons. But I mean, this could be very bad. Rob, number one, let's get to Friday the 13th in a second. We'll talk about the specifics of Friday the 13th in a moment. But how significant is this ruling as far as future IP as we go forward, particularly as it pertains to stuff like Marvel and their ongoing cases right now?
I think it's very significant. And, when it really comes down to it, John, American companies, specifically Disney, have been subverting copyright law for years. And there's a reason why copyright law was created in the first place. And I think that, this idea, the fact that IPs exist the way they exist now, this was not something anyone could have foreseen 100 years ago. But like you just said, all that you need to do is pay people what they're worth, or pay the families of creators for the legacy of what they created. And it's as simple as that. Like, no one in this country, I think America's biggest problem is, and I understand, big business does not want to be fair to the rest of the world. We're greedy capitalists, and I get it. But the fact is, if you create something, and the writer of Friday the 13th, that movie came out in 1980. So you're talking 41 years ago that the movie actually came out. And there's been how many? I have the Friday the 13th Blu-ray box set, and it has generated a whole lot of money for a whole lot of people.
Right.
And I think what's happened here is correct. I think it's just. It's what's supposed to happen. And like anyone else, Marvel is trying to, I mean, let's be clear. Disney is trying to do what they did with Mickey Mouse. We need to, this is our brand. We need to protect it, and we'll do anything. We'll pay however much we have to pay to make sure that our brand is clear. But you know what? If you go to the creators or their heirs or legacy people and say, look, we understand we're making billions of dollars off of your family member's creation. Here's a bunch of money. We want to continue doing that. Let's make a deal. That's the way it should be. And I think that with this case, I think a lot of people are going to be, maybe we should take a look at this, because my God, why shouldn't people get paid? In the case of Friday the 13th, it is the original writer who wrote that script. He deserves to have his copyright. He wrote it in the first place.
I see, and I'm a little torn on it. I mean, I like your passion, but I'm still honestly a little bit torn on it, because yes, he wrote the screenplay and he got compensated. He got paid. I mean, I always go back to this. Like, I had a discussion with a friend of ours once where it's like, well, I mean, somebody created a work, but they got paid for it. And, my friend said, yes, but if that movie goes on to make hundreds of millions of dollars, that guy should get more. And I said, well, I could buy into that only if the movie got made and lost money, that guy gives the money back. Because you shouldn't be able to have it both ways. Like, if you get paid for your work and that work ends up losing the producer's money, you don't have to give your money back. You got paid for your work. I did my work. If you go ahead and lose money on the project, that's your problem. I did the work I was contracted for. But at the same time, I mean, if the producers go off and do their jobs really well and make hundreds of millions of dollars, does that entitle the person to more money later, depending on, like you said, it's not about what you deserve. It's about what you negotiate. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a little bit torn on this. And by the way, there's a lot in this article. I want to point out this article. It's in the Hollywood Reporter. I'm going to encourage all you guys, if you're really interested in more information on this, search the Hollywood Reporter for Friday the 13th Screenwriter story, and you should be able to find it there, because a lot of this decision has to do with making a distinction between a contractor for hire versus an employee. When is it different? I mean, there's a lot of fine details that we don't have time to go into here. But if you're actually really interested in this topic, I highly recommend this Hollywood Reporter article. It gives a lot of good information on that.
But John, I think as a matter of policy, If you work on something and you create it, you write it, even if it's work for hire, if it becomes like the Friday the 13th franchise, 13 movies, whatever, and it's here for 40 years, no one knows if they're creating something, if it's going to be successful. No one. There's no magic 8 ball you can look at. Well, it is decidedly so. No one knows. But I do think that we as a society of people must compensate those who make things that are good. And those initial creators should be compensated. And the fact that we have people fighting in court to deny those who have made something, foundational members of the team that made something successful, we should just compensate them. That's how life should work. And the fact that it doesn't work that way, that's the problem. Because people are like, we don't want to pay this person. Well, why not?
But what if they already did pay them? What if they already did pay them? I mean,
but they paid them for something that no one knew if it was going to be successful. If you make something that's successful, shouldn't we all share in that?
I don't know, because I think if you're the one who takes the risk, if you're the one taking the risk, you're the one who should get the reward. If you're the only one who's going to be hurt if it doesn't work out, then you're the one who should be the one who benefits if it does. And I think, and again, I'm only saying that one side of the argument. I'm actually torn. I'm actually torn on this.
And I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you. That's why I'm not a communist. I don't think that workers should own the methods of production, because who built the factory? Who put up the money to start the business? Who took that risk? I totally agree with you. But if it is successful, a rising tide raises all ships. Isn't it better? Like, these guys are in court. How much has the
Sure, I agree. But remember, that's not what's at stake here, because this guy isn't taking them to court to get more money. He's taking them to court to get back something they paid him for. They paid him for that script. And so they've been under the belief for decades that they own it. And now he wants to take it back. And I think it's fascinating. I think it's totally fascinating.
They've made 12 movies. Was he paid for those 12 movies? I mean, the fact is that the situation changed when the movie became successful. Just like Scarlett Johansson. It's like, this pandemic came around, so we're not going to pay you. And she's like, look, that wasn't our deal. Our deal was that you paid me and I had an expectation of this movie being theatrically released. If you change the conditions, that's on you. And if the movie becomes successful, I didn't sign on for a franchise that became hugely popular. Now that it is, you got to give me a taste.
Right.
And that's on them. I think that's, But
I feel like it's got to go both ways. I think if you're going to do that, it has to go both ways, where if it's really successful, make tons of money, I get more. Then if it's totally a failure and you lose money, I should give some of my money back. Like, I think I'm just trying to think of the principle of fairness,
I don't disagree with you there.
But I wouldn't want that. If I was to work, I'd be like, hell no, pay me what I do. I don't know. It's really interesting. It's going to be really interesting too, because I think you raise a lot of valid points, right? I think you raise a lot of valid points and a lot of stuff that's got to be considered. It's going to be interesting to see how this Disney one works out, man, with the Marvel characters. It's going to be really, really interesting. But again, guys, I encourage you, go check out that article on the Hollywood Reporter. It gives a lot of good information. Whatever it is you guys are thinking about this, jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts.